Pretenders or Contenders,
Of course you did.
Contenders or Pretenders, NBA edition. So, listen, we're going to talk about the first 8 teams in the West and the first 8 teams in the East. And for anybody that's looking at this video that clicked on it because of the thumbnail and you see the Jazz and you're a Jazz fan, this does not mean we're all picking Jazz as pretenders. Some of us may pick them, but this was just a thumbnail, just to grab your attention.
I need you to just explain what contender means. Like contender for a chip.
Contenders means do you think they can make the finals?
Okay, cool.
Pretenders means they probably won't make the finals. You think their regular season success is more of a fluke than it is what they really are.
Okay, cool.
So
Thank you.
we are going to start with the West, the Utah Jazz. So the Utah
Going
Jazz,
right at it, wasting no time.
the Utah Jazz are the first seed in the Western Conference. They have been phenomenal so far this season. And I'm going to start with you, Jack.
Yes, sir.
Do you think the Jazz are contenders or pretenders?
It's so tough because, we kind of talked about this. I don't know if it was last show or a show before. I don't think they're as much of a contender as the Lakers or Clippers. But the one thing I will say for them, the Lakers have been dealing with injuries, and they have to get healthy. And it's a concern because Anthony Davis' injury is one that can continue to leak into the playoffs, and without Anthony Davis, they've struggled mightily, and Dennis Schroeder. So I got to see them get healthy. The Clippers still have that stain from last year. They got to get over that hump. So I said it before when we were talking about them. If there was ever a year to do it as a non-super team, I guess you would say, or a team without that superstar power of the Lakers or Clippers, this would be the year. But at the end of the day, I have to say pretenders, and it's not a knock on the Jazz. It's just because those 2 LA teams are so good, and I just don't see.
Well,
I feel like by that time the Lakers will be healthy. The Clippers have started to turn it around a little bit from last year and get that stench off of them from that 3-1 lead that they blew. So I think it's going to come down to those 2 LA teams in the West, and that's the reason I'm saying the Jazz.
Well, you jinxed the Jazz. They're going to the chip. My thought process is I'm looking at both teams. I'm looking at all teams as if they're healthy. They're going in with their full loaded roster. And I'm going to say the Jazz are contenders. I think the Jazz are fully equipped. These 3 teams is going to be hard. We're going to get into it, but I think the Jazz can match up well and beat the Los Angeles Clippers. I don't think they can beat the Lakers just off the simple fact that Gobert isn't a person you're equipped to handle Anthony Davis. But I think with the Clippers, with their lack of size down low and the fact that they have Zubac and Serge Ibaka, I think Gobert is going to be much more effective in that game. So for that being said, Donovan Mitchell playing the way he's playing, and I know he's going to show up in the playoffs. Mike Conley, who's getting back to that form. They got their shooters. They got their 6th man of the year. I think the Jazz are definitely contenders in this run. I think they're contenders.
So they're contenders for you, Jack. How about you? You saying they are too?
You said pretender.
I'm going to say they're pretenders.
Jazz fans
But
hate
spoiler alert.
Don't
Jazz fans, don't jump on me. There are 2 contenders in the West for me. So it's not like I'm picking anybody else above you. There are 2. There are only 2 teams above you, and you can guess who they are.
Don't be scared now, Jack.
I'm not scared. I'm telling it like it is.
This is the thing. I'm gonna sway a little bit from what you said, Riv, where you talked about you're gonna talk about the teams fully healthy. I'm gonna talk about the teams as we're realistic as possible. The Lakers are dealing with a lot of injuries, right? And Anthony Davis, who knows what's happening with him because he has a really scary injury that they have to kind of manage because one wrong thing and he can possibly tear his Achilles like Durant did. They have to really manage his injury accordingly. So because of that, if the Jazz are going into the playoffs and they don't have to face a fully healthy Lakers team, they'll beat the Lakers. I think they can beat the Clippers in a 7-game series. It will be a dogfight, but I think that series can go either way because we have seen the Clippers. They're one of the worst teams in the clutch this season. And the Jazz have been losing recently. Like they lost to the Sixers.
They lost to the
They
Clippers.
lost to the Pelicans. But even in their losses, like against the Pelicans, they were still extremely efficient. The Pelicans had an anomaly game. So because of that, I'm going with the Jazz as contenders because I think they shoot the ball so well from 3. They are very efficient, and they defend really well. It's really going to come down to can they keep hitting their shots, and to this point in the season they have been, And if you can hit your threes like that on a consistent basis, I think that you're a contender. Just because analytically it shows that you're a contender.
Wait, before you go,
let me say,
hold on, I just want to say this. You said they weren't the locks to make the playoffs. You jinxed them, and now they're literally like the best team in the West. You do know that, right?
Listen. Let's revisit this segment in like April. The reason I say that is because if in April or later April, early May, if the Lakers are still not healthy, we're having a different conversation. I'm trusting that the Lakers are being smart with this AD injury, taking it easy. If we get to May and they're still having some injury issues, I will start to be very concerned about that. And like you said, if we're talking a non-healthy Lakers team, I think it's a totally different story. But if we're talking everybody healthy, I don't see anybody in the West getting past those two teams.
I think they're gonna monitor AD's situation. I think they're gonna do it pretty well. So that's why I'm not really too worried about it. I still think if they don't have AD, it's still gonna be a dogfight with just LeBron.
Listen, both of you.
Agreed.
Jack, do you want to listen to your take that you said about the Jazz? But
I was wrong about the Jazz. I've admitted.
Nah, you have to play it.
You want us to play it though?
You could play it. I was wrong about it.
Turn the Bluetooth up, because I don't think Jazz fans have listened to this yet.
Oh no, they listen
the Jazz
than I do about teams looking on the outside in, but I would not feel confident about saying the Jazz are a playoff lock.
Oh, but you don't think a team outside of OKC in the West are going to miss the playoffs?
If I had to pick one, it would probably
say it.
What you think?
It's the Jazz.
I don't think it would be the Jazz.
Who else is missing the playoffs from the West? I feel better about the.
That was the take. They really are the best team in the league, though.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
No,
I thought they were
wrong.
going to be like middle of the pack. I didn't think they were.
I think I was the only one that said they're like a lock, like a legit lock, and you just went all, they're not getting in. It's wraps for them. I was like,
I never said they weren't getting in. I said I didn't think they were a lock.
They proved you wrong.
So on to the next team. The Phoenix Suns. They're the second seed in the West right now. Contenders or pretenders?
Pretenders.
Oh,
pretenders.
Do you think
if the Jazz are not contenders for me, the Suns are not contenders? I'm sorry. I like the Suns a lot. They're a lot of fun to watch. But when it comes down to it, they have to face off. The benchmark is the two Los Angeles teams. How are they going to defend against Paul George and Kawhi Leonard? How are they going to defend against LeBron and AD? I don't see it happening. They're pretenders to me.
The Suns are kind of like the Toronto Raptors for me. I'm not really too high on them. I would probably call them pretenders just because of the strength. It has nothing to do with Chris Paul. I think the young guys still have a lot to They have a lot to learn. They have a room to groom, and you have guys like Devin Booker, DeAndre, and Michael Bridges. These are young guys who've never tasted the playoffs, so they don't know what it's like. So it's tough for me to say off first glance a team who's fresh, aside from Jay Crowder and Chris Paul, they're fresh with playoff experience, to say they're contenders. So I think I'm gonna just lean towards they're pretenders for me.
Yeah, the Suns are pretenders. They can't beat the Clippers or the Lakers in a 7-game series. Chris Paul, you're really not sure if he's gonna get hurt. Because as the season gets deeper into the season, as we get deeper into the season, Chris Paul does tend to have a history of getting a little bit hobbled. So because of that, I'm not extremely sold on the Suns, and I don't think they match up with the Lakers or the Clippers and even the Jazz as of right now. So the third team, the Los Angeles Clippers, I'm going to say this. I mean, look, I think they definitely can be contenders, but the Clipper team I'm seeing now are pretenders. I don't know. It's just something about the Clippers that they need a real point guard. But not only that, but I don't see that heart when I watch the Clippers play. I don't see that type of aggressiveness with the Clippers. The Clippers are supposed to be this team that has a persona of junkyard dogs, getting after it, being elite defensively, but they haven't been elite defensively. And because of that, I think to this point, the Clippers are pretenders.
It's like if you actually watch their Clippers doc on YouTube, they actually got rid of that whole mental, that whole junkyard stuff. They got rid of it because it did not work for them. I'm not gonna say they're complete pretenders. I agree with Joel. I love the Clippers only because I love Paul George. It's one of my favorite players. There are nights where they show me that they're contenders. That they can bang with anybody, they can beat any team in the league. And then there are nights where it's like they're pretenders. I want to say they're contenders if they get the best of Kawhi and Paul George. I would say no doubt in my mind they are pretenders and one of the best teams. If Paul George is not Paul George, they are pretenders and they will get bounced out in the second round. And that's just like, and if that bench doesn't show up, that's how I would look at it. I think Tyronn Lue has done his best job, and he's done a better job than Doc Rivers already. I think he's connected. I think Marcus Morris has been good off the bench. Lou Will has adapted to his role as the point guard off the bench. But at the end of the day, Serge and Zubac, they've been doing their thing. But at the end of the day, it comes to Paul George and Kawhi, mainly Paul George. 'Cause I think we all could agree, aside from last year, we know Kawhi is going to show up. It has to be Paul George. And if he doesn't show up, they are complete contenders. Complete pretenders. But if Paul George does arrive and you get that two-way tandem that you thought you were going to get, they're contenders for me.
See, this is tough for me because I feel.
What the hell?
I if the Lakers are healthy, I don't think there's a team in the West that's touching them. But because of the Lakers' health issues, I would have the Clippers right there as the next highest contender. But now that I'm talking through this, and I didn't consider this when I was preparing, but now that I'm saying it out loud, if I'm giving the Clippers the benefit of the Lakers' health issue, I feel wrong not giving the Jazz that same benefit because I think the Jazz, I would connect the Clippers to the Jazz in a sense like I don't have either of them on the level of a healthy Lakers team. But if the Lakers are injured going into the playoffs and AD is either not playing or on the court at like 50%, then I think the Clippers and the Jazz have just as good of a chance to make it to the finals out of the West. Like I think both of them can beat a hobbled Lakers team. If the Lakers are healthy, I don't think either of them can beat them. So, like I wish I could say like a semi-contender. Like a lukewarm contender. And if I can do that, I'll go back and retroactively say I have the Jazz on the same level as the Clippers.
So they're not a bookmark for you. The Clippers. They're kind of like
I think the benchmark should still be the Clippers for the Jazz right now because it would be.
So it's Lakers, Clippers, Jazz for you.
Yeah, but it's like 2A, 2B.
Okay.
In my opinion, like that's how I think of it. I think both of those two teams have more to prove than the Lakers. The Lakers are more of a solidified contender.
So the next team, the Los Angeles Lakers, I'll make this quick. They're contenders. They have LeBron James. It's not really much to think about it.
Yeah.
No. Damn, you made it so fast. Contender. I think they're contenders 100%.
Even if AD is injured, I still count on LeBron.
They'll
have a chance to make the finals with LeBron.
I think if AD is hurt, I still think LeBron is going to give Utah the fight of their life, regardless. I'm not like on the Jack train where it's like I don't think anybody can beat a healthy Lakers team. I think the Clippers can beat a healthy Lakers team, but I would bet on LeBron 10 times out of 10. But I think the Clippers could do it. But yeah, I think they're still the number one team in the West when healthy. But I think if we're talking health, obviously the AD injury. But I think if they're all fully loaded and ready to go, realistically, I have the Lakers as number one.
Are the Lakers without Anthony Davis contenders?
Yes.
They still have LeBron.
Okay.
I would bet on the other two teams, but I think like LeBron would make it a 6-7 game series.
Okay. I agree. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about it.
I
just think this like the way I look at it when I'm talking about these three teams, because I think they're the three teams that are going to be in the mix. Going small ball is what it was last year. The Lakers did it so well. I think the Clippers can throw out a really good small ball lineup this year with Ibaka at the 5, the Lakers with AD at the 5. And for the Jazz, I think that will be a tough thing to match up with because Rudy is so impactful to them.
You know what's crazy?
I don't know if he could be out there against a small ball
That's
lineup.
not even the Clip. That's why I think the Clippers, it really comes down to Paul George, Kawhi, right? Because that's not even their small ball lineup. Their small ball lineup is Kawhi, Morris, PG. They run those three, and then they run the Pat Bev, Lou Will, or they put Batum in. And I think it's going to be weird to see because when they played the Nets twice, Batum was being picked on late in the game when they ran those small ball lineups. Kyrie, Harden, and KD kind of just had fun with him. So against the Lakers with Kawhi at the 5, it's going to be interesting to see if AD's obviously healthy, how that's going to play out.
I'd rather see Ibaka out there. I think he can move well enough to be a
me
part
too.
of a small.
I think that's what they got him
the
for.
Three ball and still defend the interior, which would present that problem for it's a body to put on AD, and he can hang with Rudy Gobert. So if the Jazz tried to keep Rudy out there and pick on the Clippers inside, I don't think they could do that against Serge.
Yeah.
Whereas, if it was a Morris or Batum or Kawhi at the 5, it would be much more difficult for the Clippers to guard the Jazz. But now they can keep Ibaka out there at the 5, have 4 guys around the perimeter that can shoot the basketball, run up and down the floor, and I think that would be tough having Rudy out there at the 5. Or if you put him on the bench, then you're taking the second most impactful player on your team off the court. So that to me is where it's tough.
Okay, so these are the next batch of teams. We could just speed this up because we got to do Eastern Conference too. You guys are like going
There's
on
more
a
teams
tangent.
in the West?
Yes, so
Wow.
the Blazers, Portland Trail Blazers, are they contenders or pretenders? Do they have any shot to make the finals?
Yes.
You give them a shot to make the finals.
If they're healthy, I'm going off the. This is going to be a hot take. I'm going off the strength. If they are healthy, I'm going to give them as much of a chance as I give Utah.
Whoa.
Yeah, if they have CJ if they have CJ back, they get Nurkic back, Cantor off the bench, Melo's playing the way he's playing, Dame's playing like a superstar. We know he's going to play like Robert Covington's starting to get it going. I do believe that this team can definitely. I'll put them in the same boat as Utah. I think they could be a contender in this league if it goes the right way. I think they can do. I think they can beat the Clippers.
They're not a good defensive team. They won't. They're not contenders. They're pretenders because they are not a good defensive team. They rely on their offense, and Terry Stotts to this point has not shown the ability to find ways to get Dame freed up when he is double teamed and when they start to double team him. Because of that, they're pretenders. I don't think their offense matches up with the other top teams in the West, and defensively they can't match up either. So because of that, they're pretenders.
Yeah, I'm also going pretenders. The defense, like you said, is not there, and personnel-wise, I don't think they match up great against any of the top 3, regardless of the top, let alone the top 2. So I would have them pretenders.
So the other team, the Spurs. I'm guessing none of us think they're going to contend.
Contenders, but it's been a nice good season for them. You gotta give them props for that.
Pretenders, but give them props for what
they are pretenders. Now, next team, the Denver Nuggets.
Contenders.
You think they're contenders?
They're good season for Jokic, but they're pretenders.
I'm going to call them pretenders, but I will say if I had to pick outside of the Lakers, Clippers, Jazz, the Nuggets would be the next team I would bump up to contender status.
At the Suns?
Over Portland?
I would probably put them over both the Suns and Portland.
You guys are pretty high on Portland in summer, man. This is crazy.
Yeah.
No, I never said that Portland could compete for a championship.
You called them a top 3 seed.
I thought they were going to be a top regular season team, but I never thought they'd compete for a championship.
I said they can make the WCF.
That's right there.
So now the Nuggets, I think the Nuggets have a chance if they're healthy. If Michael Porter starts to get going, we've seen Jamal Murray in the playoffs. This Nuggets team can make the Western Conference Finals depending on matchup. Like right now, they're projected to face the Suns in the first round. They can beat the Suns in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So now if you beat the Suns in the playoffs, you're the 7th seed. Who do you go and face? Do you go face the Jazz now? I think they go face the Jazz if I'm not mistaken.
Now, that's going to be tricky because the last
I think they face the winner of the 3 and 6 seed. So they'd face the Clippers or something. They face the Clippers.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So if they
both teams they blew the 3-1 lead to Denver, Utah, and the Clippers.
Yeah, so I think they could beat I think the Nuggets could beat anybody in the playoffs because Joker is so phenomenal. Jamal Murray plays like a superstar in the playoffs. But then the next team, the Mavericks / the Warriors, who knows who's going to get that 8th spot?
Warriors.
They're both pretenders. I think
I would
they're
consider
pretenders.
anybody who takes that 8th seed, I would call a pretender.
So now going on to the Eastern Conference, the number 1 seed in the East, the Philadelphia 76ers. Are they contenders or pretenders? They're pretenders. They have been pretenders for the past couple of years. Because Ben Simmons can't shoot, it's going to hold them back. And Doc Rivers has been known to not be that great of a coach in the playoffs. He blew a 3-1 lead in Orlando with T-Mac, blew a 3-1 lead with the Lob City Clippers, with the recent Clippers. You could make an argument that he underachieved with the Big 3 Celtics. So as a whole, I think because of Doc Rivers, because of Ben Simmons not being able to shoot, the 76ers are pretenders. Embiid is having a phenomenal year, but they won't make the NBA championship. They won't make the finals.
I think the Nets have spaced themselves out as, above the rest of the Eastern Conference. But if there was any team I was going to pick against the Nets, it would be the Sixers. I know they have the issues with Doc Rivers. They haven't proven themselves in the playoffs, but Embiid is playing at such a high level. He would create an issue for the Nets defensively. It would take a really great series out of Ben Simmons and the shooters around those two guys. I think they did a good job putting together a team this season with shooters. Tobias Harris has played much better, and they need to stay at this level in the playoffs. Obviously, can they do that is a big question mark. But if I was going to bet against any team other than the Nets in the East, the Sixers would be my next pick.
They kind of fall into my Clippers. Take the same way. If you get that monster Embiid, you get Ben Simmons, you get Tobias Harris, who's been playing good. He keeps his consistency going. Seth Curry and them shooters out there. They have the personnel to match up with the Nets. You could throw out a Ben Simmons and a Matisse Thybulle lineup, guys who can guard the big three in Brooklyn. They have the personnel. They have Joel Embiid, who's playing like an MVP. So I'm going to lean more towards contenders for them. Yeah. I'm going to say the way they're playing right now, I will have them as a contenders in the East.
The next team, the Brooklyn Nets, they're contenders. They're going to win the NBA championship. I've said it when they first got Harden. I said they were going to, before they traded for Harden, when there was talks, I said if they get Harden, they're going to win a championship. They got Harden. I said they're going to win then. And right now I'm saying it again. I'm doubling down on it, tripling, quadrupling, 100th, doubling down on this take. The Brooklyn Nets will win the NBA championship this season. And yeah, pretty much. They're contenders most definitely. They're going to sweep the floor with the East. And I think it doesn't matter who comes out the West. Brooklyn is winning it all.
Contenders?
Yeah, I think they've really separated themselves at least in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, when you have those three guys, the way they're playing, nobody in the league can stop that trio. And then it just seems like everything's falling into place. Joe Harris is shooting the ball at an elite level. They're getting great contributions from Jeff Green, even though he's hurt. TLC, Bruce Brown, who is showing a level that we never even thought we would see out of him, playing like a 6'4" forward. It's ridiculous. And then now Nick Claxton coming back from injuries had two incredible nights, and he fills that role of the 6'11" big that can defend the pick and roll and catch some lobs. So it's like everything is falling into place for this team. If they can stay healthy, they are on a warpath for a title.
Yep.
And how skeptical I was before the trade when the trade happened. But I told you, the day of James Harden's press conference, I trusted them to figure it out because the way he came in, his mentality, hearing him speak, I felt much better about it. And since then, it's been nothing but up from there. They are right now by far the favorites in the Eastern Conference.
He's a charming guy. Now we're going to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks. They're the third seed in the Eastern Conference. Are they contenders or pretenders? The Milwaukee Bucks, in my opinion, are pretenders, and not because of their talent, but mostly because of Mike Budenholzer. I think he has really, I don't know if he's regressed as a coach or his coaching ability is showing his true colors, because he has this defensive philosophy where they don't protect the three-point line that well. Like they'd rather help out in the paint and not give easy layups rather than give an open three. They'd rather give an open three than an open layup. I just think analytically, like, you probably should guard the three better. They don't guard the three so well. Because of that, I think they're going to get exposed in the playoffs. They have been pretenders for the last couple of years. They have been a 60-win team for the past couple of years, and nothing has come from it. So because of that, I think they're pretenders, and Giannis, to this point, has yet to develop a consistent jump shot. The Bucks are pretenders.
Yeah, I mean, I have – it's funny because the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, despite the discrepancy in talent, I think, they're very similar to me. I think the Nets are the Lakers, the 76ers are the Clippers, and the Bucks to me are the Jazz, a team that I think can make it, but I think they need some things to work in their favor. Giannis still worries me in the playoffs because of that jump shot, like you mentioned. And when it comes down to winning time, you want the ball in your best player's hands, and you don't know if he can do that. Mike Budenholzer struggles in the playoffs, so There's a lot of concerns. I really like their personnel. I think they did a good job building a team around Giannis this year with the shooters and all of that. So I think they can, but I'm definitely skeptical, and I would put them in that semi-contender, but very much not confident, just like I was saying about the Jazz.
Like they have the personnel. They went out this offseason, fixed some of their problems from last playoffs. Giannis was passing out to guys and they couldn't hit shots. They fixed that. They fixed the Eric Bledsoe problem by bringing in a much, much better player in Drew Holiday. He hasn't really figured it out, but I think he'll get it going by the playoffs. I would definitely have them as a contender just because I think they have the personnel to beat every team in the East. I don't think if I had to put my money, I would put my money on the Nets, but I think they have the personnel to beat every team in the East. They are probably the only team, in my opinion, in the East that can guard the Nets' big three as best as you could. So that's why I would probably say for them I would have them as contenders because they also, outside of KD, Harden, and Kyrie, they have the next best guy in the East in Giannis. So I would go with them as contenders.
The next team, the Boston Celtics, in my opinion, if they go out and trade for Nikola Vucevic, they're contenders. But because I don't know if that's going to happen, and because they've been playing mediocre this season so far, the Boston Celtics are pretenders for me so far, throughout the season. We'll see if they trade for a more dominant player, but to this point, they're pretenders. And if they remain with this core in the playoffs, they'll be pretenders.
You took the words right out of my mouth. They should go out and trade for Nick Vucevic immediately. He would make them contenders, in my opinion. Depending on what they have to give up, I'd have to see the package. But if they could do something based around Kemba, I think that would be a huge win for the Celtics. It would make them contenders. But right now, the way they're constructed, I have them as pretenders.
I like Boston. I think Boston, like I said with Milwaukee, they have the personnel to beat any team in the East. They just haven't been playing the way they thought they should be playing. Their bench is dreadful. Kemba Walker has been in and out of the lineup. He hasn't been healthy. Marcus Smart has been out. The team doesn't look the same with him. Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum have to figure out can we put up these numbers and still win factor. And with that being said, I have them as a pretender. They have all the tools to be a contender. They just haven't shown us that they're that. Even with getting Vucevic, I think still the chemistry problems are gonna be there. I think depends on what they give up. I don't think they're gonna just accept the straight up Kemba for Vucevic thing. I think they're gonna have to give up something off that bench. I don't think that's gonna be good enough because then they're gonna be without a point guard, and Marcus Smart is gonna have to run the one. So I don't know about that, but right now I have him as a pretender.
Next team, the New York Knicks. They're having a fantastic season, but they're pretenders. They won't make the championship. They won't make the finals.
They won't make the second round.
A team that's pretenders, that has had a really good season, you give them credit for it. As good of a job as they've done, they're pretenders.
They're not coming out the first round.
Next team, the Miami Heat. I think if fully healthy, they can beat any team outside of the Nets and possibly Philly. But for the most part, they're pretenders based off of how they've been playing this season. They're pretenders.
Just continuing with my comparisons to the West, the Heat would be my Denver Nuggets. They're pretenders, but if I had to choose one team outside of those top three, I would leapfrog them above the Celtics. The Celtics would be my Suns, and the Heat would be my Nuggets. I would have the Heat right as that next team out because if they put it all together, they scare me more than the Celtics.
I think this team is probably going to shock us all and make us look like fools at this table. But I'm going to go ahead and say they're pretenders just of the way they're playing and how they're looking right now.
So the next team, the Hornets and the Raptors, they won't make the finals.
They're pretenders.
Okay, so that's going to do it for our contenders or pretenders. In the comments down below, or in the comments, just type in who you think are contenders and which team you think are pretenders. So just type in your biggest contender, the team you think is going to make the finals and win it all, and your biggest pretender.